I wanted to show you what it looks like to travel on an au pair budget exactly, and I'll show you how by taking you on my trip to Madrid, where I visited my little sister and spent less than 200 euros for a 4-day vacation. The first tip I can give you, if you're trying to travel on an au pair budget, make your priority people, not place. That's kind of my mantra in life in general. People are more important than the place. But in terms of traveling on a budget, it's super important. We have people that we know who often travel. I mean, lots of young people travel. That's kind of becoming more and more of a thing. So take advantage of that. If there are other people that you know in Europe, go visit them, obviously with an invitation. Don't just, show up at their doorstep. That's exactly why I ended up taking a trip to Madrid. Obviously, I want to say my little sister, she's the best, but she also had a couch that I could sleep on, and I got to appreciate Madrid for a whole 4 days. Tip number 2 definitely goes along with tip number 1, and that is to travel to cheap places. Europe is a big place, and there are lots of countries that are super tempting to go to, like Denmark or Norway or the northern countries. If you travel there, you will learn, like Hannah and I did, the hard way, that it is really expensive. And we're talking like 10 American dollars for 1 cup of coffee. So in order to avoid that, go to countries that are cheaper, like Eastern Europe. Spain is really cheap to travel to. Also in Spain, something that I love is if you order 1 alcoholic beverage, depending on the bar, you get a whole load of tapas, so that's free food and a cheap drink. Yes. So just keep track of what countries are more affordable to go to, and you can kind of gauge that based on, first of all, by asking the APOP community and going on our open forum, but also by gauging and looking on Airbnb and seeing what accommodations are like and seeing if there are hostels available. So yeah, travel to cheap places. Tip number 3, travel in Europe is cheap if you have low standards. Yay, my sister's here! So I didn't tell you what this vlog is. This is a vlog on how to go on vacation on an au pair budget. So what did I eat? You just bum off of everyone else. And what did I eat?
You ate some chickpeas, a banana, maybe 1 cookie, 2 bananas, 1 cookie, and an apple. Nice, and that's all you ate. And did you have a latte?
I did.
Always have a latte.
Girl knows who I am. Just because I love traveling and I don't have that much money, I travel very, very lightly, and I travel, sometimes I wear the same thing every day. Call me gross, but it's completely worth it. I really have gotten used to traveling with a tiny backpack, no liquids. I always find a way to figure things out. And to be honest, at this point, underpacking and being able to see the countries that I want is way better than overpacking and being held back by my luggage. I've survived on this bottle of chickpeas today, and we're going out to sushi. It's not like I'm not eating nothing. I'm just eating, I'm rationing things out. When I'm traveling, I will be the first to admit that I don't eat the healthiest. In the same breath, you can also sacrifice other things if you don't want to sacrifice food. You don't have to do all of the things. You don't have to pay to go to that museum. You don't have to pay to go on that tour. You can invent a walking tour on your own and do research online and do a walking tour in that way instead of going on a crazy bike tour. Or you can go on a free walking tour and not give a tip. Oops. There's so many creative ways to see a city for free and to make sacrifices. What are your sacrifices? Tell us down below, because I probably am one of the few people that sacrifice food. It's not like the best thing to sacrifice, but that's what I do. Gatos. C'est trop chaud. Et donc on a acheté 2 autres glaces. Tip number 5, get to enjoy cafes and bars, but more so cafes. I know this sounds kind of like lock yourself up in a cafe and don't see the city. That's not what I'm saying at all. Traveling is exhausting. So it's nice to have a map, and this is what I do before I visit a city. I star out on Google Maps all of the cafes that are in the city, Starbucks, cool hipster places, just so I know that I have a place where I can seek respite if I need it. And in a cafe, you only have to pay, you know, €2 for an espresso. Even if it's gross and you don't want to drink it, at least you've bought time to sit in a place and to enjoy and relax from your busy travel experience. Hey, dice, ¿qué hora es?
Hora de café.
Hora de café, l'heure de café, hour of coffee.
Voy a poner esto para apoyar a mi hermana.
Oh. If you're traveling on an au pair budget, the one and only option to travel abroad is to find cheap flights, cheap buses, and cheap blah blah cars. And don't think of it as a negative experience. Buses and stuff are great because you get to travel all across Europe, across the country for like $15. Sometimes even less than that with Megabus and Flixbus and WeBus. In my opinion, they're kind of all similar, but they're great. So really take advantage of that, especially because we're young. Our standards are not that high. So if we have to take a night bus once in a while, it's all good. Il est 11h et mon vol il est à 6h. Ça me donne 6 heures de sommeil. The last tip that I have for you if you're trying to travel on an au pair budget is to pick your weekends carefully and try to be flexible. This is really hard on an au pair schedule, but in France, if you're an au pair in France, for example, every 6 weeks you have a 2-week holiday break. Buy your tickets for that holiday break in advance, well in advance, and try to be flexible about your dates. Prices surge up during that time, so if you can convince your host parents to give you a Friday off or a Monday off to help give you a nice long weekend where you can take a trip somewhere, that's great. And also, don't underestimate the cities that are in your country. Now, I really appreciate going to Dijon and like small cities that are 2 hours away from Paris that make for a really enjoyable and fast weekend trip away with my friends. If you want more tips, definitely check out aupairopairs.com. The best thing that you could do in terms of travel is travel with a partner and split all the costs. Find your travel buddy in the APOP community by becoming a member on aupairopairs.com and say hello to everyone. We love you guys. We love this community. Thank you for asking all of your questions and for traveling the world together. That's all for now. Comment, like, and support down below to help. It really helps our channel. We'll see you in the next video. Ciao, bye. What would you give as advice for traveling on a budget?
Don't.
Don't.